MineCraft Ghost. Story 1. Steve and the Ghost. Steve is in his house. He has barely finished cooking and has set the plates on the table. He sits down and smells his meal. Ah, nice! Cauliflower, meatloaf, and potatoes. This is going to be delicious. He starts eating and is stopped by a gush of wind. Huh? Steve says. What was that? He looks to his left and notices the door is open. I thought I closed that door. Am I going nuts? He gets up and closes the door again. That was weird. Oh well, he isn't going to let it spoil his dinner. But then it happens again, this time stronger. The door swings open and the wind blows away one of his napkins. Whoosh! How did this happen? It doesn't make any sense. Just an hour ago, the wind wasn't so strong, and now it's blowing over his stuff. Steve gets up again and closes the outside door. Everything seems calm, nothing going on. But suddenly, he hears a soft moaning sound. Ooh! Who's there? Steve asks. No answer. If you think this is funny, then come laugh over here, because I think it's a sick joke, Steve shouts. Again, no answer. Oh well, Steve thinks. If it's one of those annoying kids from across the street, I will find out eventually. He reads a book and goes to sleep. That evening, there are no more disturbances. The next morning, he wakes up to the sound of birds chirping. The wind is gone. It's all quiet, except for the birds. He stands up and puts on his clothes, after which he heads to the main village castle. He walks through the gate and passes the guards there. He greets his superior and reports the tasks from the previous day. Steve is a village guard, a knight of some sort that protects his hometown from invading enemies like creepers, endermen, and zombies. Some of them are really dangerous and scary. He has had times that he barely survived and thought he shouldn't have been alive. But hey, it pays the bills, and he is an adventurous type anyway. He doesn't mind it. Besides, he is not afraid to die. He has nothing to lose. Most of his family members are gone or deceased, and he isn't even married. That's not to say he doesn't consider his life valuable, but he is more than happy to sacrifice it for the well-being of others, if needed. So why would he care? Ready to go, sir, he says. His superior, Magnosius, is a tough dude. He has a strong chin and some big muscles. He has been a guard as long as Steve, but his extra courses and training helped him fight his way up the career ladder and become a commanding officer. He is wearing a red shirt and always carries his sword behind his back. Get your sword, Steve, he says. We have reports coming in from the northern borders. Endermen are attacking the farmers there. I need you to go and stop them. Don't come back until they are defeated. How many are we talking about, sir? Steve asks. Oh, just a handful, I think. Very well, sir. I will go right away. Steve salutes Magnosius, turns around, and runs out the castle gate. When he arrives at the designated area about 20 minutes later, he sees what the officer means. Immediately, he is confronted with a few endermen beating up a villager behind a farm. Hey you, stop that! Steve yells, and with those remarks, he dashes forward to fight the endermen. The villager quickly hides behind a wall, watching the brave guard put his life in danger to secure his. Steve slashes with his sword and decapitates an enderman. The others jump back and attack Steve quickly afterwards. He misses and Steve counters his moves by stabbing the Enderman in the chest. "Die, evil monster!" Steve exclaims. And with that, the fight is over. The last Enderman flees into the forest from whence it came. Steve helps the villager up by reaching out. The villager grabs his hand and thanks him elaborately. "Come have some tea," the farmer says. "Oh, no thank you. I need to be on my way," Steve answers. "No, really. Just sit down with me for a few minutes. It would be my pleasure." "Okay, I guess a few minutes wouldn't hurt," Steve says. He follows the farmer to his home, where he receives a cup of hot, steaming tea. The farmer sits across from him and says, "You should be careful out there. One of these days, you're not going to make it. Have you thought of that?" "It comes with the job," Steve says. "I don't care, actually." "You don't fear death?" "Nope. It's all just a phase. I believe in the eternal worlds. My spirit will move on when I die." "Well, that's good to know. I am terrified of death. What if there is nothing after this life?" "Then I better make the most of it," Steve answers. "Now, if you will excuse me, I have to report to my commander. Thanks for the tea." "You're welcome." Steve returns to the castle and reports defeating the Endermen. "0 fatalities on our side," the report includes. Magnosius is proud of him. He lets Steve go for the rest of the day. "Nice," Steve thinks. "All this free time for myself." Satisfied with his accomplishment, he walks home and lies down on his bed. He closes his eyes. Time for a nap. Steve sleeps and sleeps. The fighting has made him tired. At first, all is peaceful, but when time elapses, he is woken up by the same gush of wind. Whoosh! The door swings open again. "What is up with that door?" he asks himself. He walks over to close it, and then sees a strange creature in the distance with green eyes, hovering about the ground. "What the?" But before he can finish his sentence, the creature flies at him and knocks him to the ground. "Ouch!" Steve says. He gets up and runs to get his sword. He grabs it and holds it in front of him, looking around and wondering where the creature is at. "Are you a ghost?" he shouts. "I'm not afraid of you. What do you want from me?" The ghost flies at him again, but this time Steve evades its attack. "Come face me like a man," Steve yells. "Boo!" the ghost answers. "Boo? Is that all you got to say? Can you even talk?" Steve asks. "Of course I can talk," he hears. Huh? A talking ghost? He didn't expect that one. "Come here and I'll impale you with my sword, you coward," Steve says. "You wouldn't be able to, even if you wanted to," the ghost says. "You would stab right through me. I am a ghost, remember." "Then what do you want with me?" Steve asks again. "Oh, I just wanted to have some fun. I am terribly bored, you know." "Well, if you want fun, then just come talk to me. What's the point of haunting me?" "Sure," the ghost says, and he flies over to Steve. Finally, Steve gets to take a closer, longer look at the ghost. It's amazing that he can see through him, yet still he sees him. "What's your name?" Steve asks. "I am Gordor. I used to be a guard until I died. And I've been flying around as a ghost ever since. It's pretty cool, actually. Nobody can do anything to me, but I can do something to others. That's how I think it works, at least." So now what? Steve asks. Are you going to use your powers for good? Or are you just gonna bully me and others around with your eerie sounds? Well, since you're a guard, perhaps we can team up and defeat enemies together, the ghost says. Steve thinks for a few seconds. Then he looks up at Gordor and says, as long as you stay out of the castle, if they find out I brought a ghost to do my dirty work for me, I don't think they will like it. Fine, I will stay out of the castle. Anything else? Yeah, I want to know how you died exactly. Maybe I can learn from your experience. I died defending the village, Gordor says. I was surrounded by wither skeletons, but I was winning. It was a piece of cake. I slaughtered them one by one, and the dead skeletons piled up in front of me. Soon I would have defeated the whole army, but my pride got in the way. I celebrated in my mind before I was there. Meanwhile, dozens of skeletons were slain by the slashing moves of my sword. But then, when I finally thought I had defeated most of them, one of the skeletons stood in front of me. What was so special about that one? I had never seen anything like it, Gordor says. It was humongous, twice as big as the other wither skeletons. He was wearing some crazy armor, with signs and symbols all over it. I was frightened. The skeleton intimidated me. I didn't know what to do, so I panicked. I stabbed another skeleton and ran. He chased after me and swung his giant sword, missing the first time, but hitting me the second time. That was it for me. I struggled for breath, and I died within minutes. If only I had the courage to stand up to it, I could have been victorious. I still feel awful about it. Where is this wither skeleton? Steve asks. I believe he is wandering around on the western border. But if I were you, I would stay away from it. I had my chance and I died. Don't let that happen to you. I won't, but I just feel like it's my duty to avenge you, Steve says. You don't have to. I mean, it was my mistake. You still have an entire life ahead of you. Don't risk it. What if you came with me? You could distract it, and I could kill it. Gordor has to think about that one. Maybe, he says. Steve and Gordor talk all evening. Steve learns about Gordor's former life, gets the confirmation that there is life after death, and tells the ghost about some of the adventures he has experienced defending Minoville. They are having lots of fun, until Steve tells Gordor he has to go to sleep. Ghosts don't sleep, so Gordor decides to fly away until the morning. The next day, Gordor is standing next to Steve's bed when he wakes up. Wow! Whoa! You scared me to death, Steve says. No, because you're still alive, Gordor replies. It's an expression, you weirdo. And by the way, you have to wait until I am done eating, because I am not going to defend the village on an empty stomach. Fine, no problem. Gordor watches Steve eat some sausages, eggs, and bacon, but it doesn't do much with him because he doesn't have a nose anyway. When they head out the door and arrive at the castle, Steve tells Gordor to stay outside so he won't scare anyone. Then Steve goes to Magnosius and asks him where he is needed. "At the west side of the city," is the answer. Wow, what a coincidence, Steve thinks. Who knows? I might come across that big wither skeleton that killed my ghost friend. Steve runs towards the west side of the village, near the edge of the woods. And there they are, an army of skeletons, ready to attack the village, spotted by some of the best spies from the castle. Ready to attack? Yes, but he is going to stop them. "Shall we?" Gordor asks while floating next to him. "This ends now," Steve says in a low voice. He takes his sword and storms at the skeleton army, dashing and slashing, killing dozens of zombies. His buddy, the ghost, flies along and punches some skeletons in their faces, making it easier for Steve to stab them with his weapon. It goes on like this for a while. A big battle occurs on the plains in front of the forest border, but then they both hear a loud stomping. What was that?" Steve asks. "I don't know," Gordor says. Suddenly, it leaps in front of them. Bang! The ground shakes, and Steve and his ghost buddy are looking up at a giant skeleton. A monstrous figure with armor, a shield, and a huge sword, larger than Steve's own height. "That's him!" Gordor yells. "That's the skeleton who killed me. Don't just stand there." But it's already too late. The wither skeleton impales Steve with his sword. Steve coughs and falls to the ground. After a few spasms, his body remains still, and blood flows from the wound, soaking the ground and turning it red. "Oh no, Steve! I tried to warn you!" Gordor screams. "What's going to happen now?" Then he hears a voice behind him, something he didn't expect. "What is all the whining about? Grow up and don't be a stupid noob." Gordor turns around and is looking at another ghost. One that looks similar, but has blue glowing eyes instead of green. Is it? No, it can't be. "Steve?" Gordor asks carefully. "The one and only," Steve says. "Now let's get this jerk and take him with us to the other world." Steve has become a ghost with lots of benefits. He can't be stabbed, or hit, or thrown around. He has become invincible and powerful. He loves his new form of life. Well, death actually, but life nonetheless. "Do that again, you idiot," Steve says to the giant skeleton. The wither skeleton swings his sword at Steve, but as he tries to stab Steve, the weapon goes right through him. The skeleton tries it again and again, but to no avail. Steve laughs. This skeleton cannot do anything to him. When he is done, Steve says, "Now it's my turn, ugly head," and he punches the skeleton in the face. Bam! The skeleton falls over. Steve flies around him like an irritating little fly. The skeleton becomes frustrated and tries to hit him. "That's what you get for killing me and my friend here," Steve says. "Let's finish this." He flies towards the skeleton's sword and tugs it out of his hand. Then he aims and stabs the skeleton between the ribs. Fatality! The skeleton dies instantly with an agonizing cry ripping the air in half. "Nice," Gordor says when he flies over. "What are your plans now?" "Well, now that I have avenged you and died myself, I can still do my job," Steve says. "I don't have to be alive to do it. I am simply going to fly around this town and make sure it's safe. And any enemy that ever comes near it will have to answer to me." "Can I join you?" Gordor asks. "Of course you can," Steve says. "How about you stay on one side and I stay on the other side? Then we can switch off and stand guard." "Sounds like a great plan," Gordor says. And so, ever since that time, the village has been safe. Endermen, skeletons, and zombies all stayed away. No one dared enter Mineville without permission of these two invisible guardians. The end.